So notice something here. You guys had some warm-up this morning on finding the GCF of x squared and 4x. So we did this last week, and today you had a bunch of warm-up questions that are designed for you to help go through the process of factoring out what's called the greatest common factor. So we first need to know what the greatest common factor is. And we need to know the greatest common factor of our terms. Okay? So last week, what did we go through? The greatest common factor for the number 1, right? The number 1 and the number 4. What's your GCF from last week? Remember, yeah, the GCF is the number 1. Remember, I said do the numbers separate from the letters. So you now need the greatest common factor for, let's go through this, x squared and x. Okay, so what's the greatest common factor of x squared and x? Isn't it just x? So here, my GCF is just x. So we're going to use this. So all of the information you guys had for your warm-up this morning, which is how to find the greatest common factor, we're going to use that greatest common factor here. Okay? Now, we're doing what's called factoring out. You're going to factor out the GCF. Now, whenever you factor out the GCF, you're going to follow this procedure. You're going to start with the problem here. X squared minus 4x. That's your original question here. Okay? And you're going to divide by always the greatest common factor. Okay? So you're going to divide by the greatest common factor. In this case, our greatest common factor is x. So this homework question becomes what you guys had in the past. This is x squared minus 4x. You're going to divide both terms here by that x. This is going to give us what we call the quotient Q. So we're going to look for this quotient. So from your division homework, what is x squared divided by x? What'd you guys get for that answer? Isn't it just x? Okay. Minus, what is 4x divided by x? 4. That's just 4. What we found here is our quotient. So my first step when I factor out the greatest common factor is to first determine the quotient. So we're going to ask, what is the quotient? You want to determine that quotient. Okay, so what's the quotient? Our quotient here is x minus 4. So let me put it as a procedure for you guys. So I'll write it down this way. So we have that. Step 1, written as a procedure. We first have to determine the greatest common factor for the terms. So to summarize here, what we found is our GCF here was equal to x. That's our first step. Okay, step 1. Step 2, what you're going to do when you're factoring out your greatest common factor is you're now going to determine the quotient Q. Now Q is always going to be, you're going to write this as the following. Your original problem, the sum or difference. That's the question that they give you to factor. And you're always going to divide that by the greatest common factor for the terms. And in this case here, we did just that. Right? Our greatest common factor we found was that x. So I'm taking your original problem and dividing both of those terms, that difference, by x. And we then got our quotient called Q. Our quotient is x minus 4. And that's what we're going to do as a procedure. We're finally ready for the final answer step. Step number 3 is you're going to write the answer in the following format. Greatest common factor times your quotient. So notice we're determining two things, GCF and the quotient, by this procedure. So what's our GCF in this problem again? What was it? Right? It was x. So your final answer is going to be x times, what was our quotient? X minus 4. Good. You have factored out the greatest common factor. To remind you, here's the GCF. And here's my quotient. So in conclusion, I'll write it again, but it looks like this. This problem is described as x times x minus 4. Okay, these are equivalent. You have factored. Now we're going to do this for all the questions that we have on this worksheet. Okay? All the questions, and also we already found the GCF for our warm-up. Okay, so I went through that list to find the GCF and for you guys here in the warm-up, but you're going to follow this procedure. If you ever have to factor out the greatest common factor, this is really the work you have to do right here. And it's summarized right here in these steps. Okay, these are the steps that you guys use for every question that says factor out the greatest common factor. Okay, so that's the first problem. Anybody have any questions on this one? So we're going to go through that whole list, and let's take a look at the next one here. Number 3, they give us x squared plus 3x. Now we're going to have to factor out the greatest common factor, right? So let's see. What's your GCF here? Right, your GCF again is just x. Okay, because what you did in the warm-up was you found the GCF of the terms x squared and 3x. That's 1x squared. So handle your GCF separately. The numbers separate from your letters. The GCF of 1 and 3 was 1, and x squared and x, isn't it x to the smallest power? Right? Because your x has a power 1. So the GCF will be x to the smallest power, which is 1. This is also known as x. So here's your GCF. Okay, everybody okay with this? You guys remember this from last week? This is step 1. What is step 2? Right, here's our first step. You're going to take x squared plus 3x, and what are you going to do? Divide it by that GCF of x. We're going to find this quotient. Okay, so here's my quotient, q. Q is equal to this division problem. So q is going to be then x squared divided by x plus 3x divided by x. What's my quotient? What's x squared divided by x?
X plus 3.
X. And 3x divided by x is 3, so my quotient is x plus 3. Okay, so let me write down. First step, GCF. Second step, quotient. What's the third step? Write your answer. How do you write it? GCF times the quotient. You have factored out the greatest common factor. Okay, here, GCF is x. Let's make a bigger, maybe that'll work. Here, my GCF is x. Divided that problem by the GCF, and I got the quotient here to be x plus 3. These are the two terms I use as my final answer. Okay, you guys okay with that one? Remember, GCF, quotient. Okay, we have to repeat that problem, this process now for all those other questions. So we look at number 5. Okay, so we're going to have to do it for all of these. We get 3x squared minus 9x. Okay, first step again, GCF. You guys know what the GCF of 3x squared and 9x is? It's 3x. Okay, that's good. This is from last week, right? We need the GCF of the terms 3x squared and 9x. Do them one at a time. 3 and 9, your GCF again was 3. X squared and x to the first power. It's x to the first power, or just simply 3x. And that's how we got our 3x. Step 2, right? Let's find the quotient. 3x squared minus 9x. Divide your terms by 3x. So my quotient's going to be 3x squared divided by 3x minus 9x divided by 3x. So what's this quotient? 3's cancel. I guess I just have x. Is that right? X's cancel. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So here's my answers. Greatest common factor, 3x. Quotient, x minus 3. And we're done. Okay, anybody have any questions on this one? Number 5, you're factoring out the greatest common factor. All right, let's look at number 7. So we're going to go over all those questions. 4x squared plus 8x. Okay, what's your greatest common factor here? Right, 4x squared and 8x. What is it? Well, let's see. Do the numbers separate from the letters, right? 4 and 8, what's your GCF? It's 4. What about x squared and x? X. Remember, it's x to the smallest power. My GCF is 4x. So we'll write it here. That's my first step. I now need a quotient. So I have 4x squared plus 8x divided by the GCF to get the quotient. 4x squared divided by 4x. 8x divided by 4x, right? Let's find our quotient. X squared over x is just x. My x's cancel, and what's 8 divided by 4? That's 2. So I have what I need. Final answer, 4x times my x plus 2. Okay, you're factoring out the greatest common factor. Anybody have any questions on this one? So remember, your warm-up was to find the GCF, and then now we're going to use that information to find the quotient here. So this is going to be number 9, and number 9 looks like this. Oh, here we go. 5x squared minus 15x. Okay. First step, what's the greatest common factor of 5 and 15? Right, the 5 and the 15. What's your GCF? 5. Okay. X squared and x. Okay, you guys know the GCF here. It's 5x. Let's get the quotient. Our quotient's going to be 5x squared minus 15x. Everything's going to be divided by my GCF, 5x. So I get 5x squared divided by 5x minus 15x divided by 5x. Let's do our division. 5 and 5 cancels. X squared divided by x, what do you get? That's x minus my x's cancel. What's 15 divided by 5? That's 3. Step number 3 now. You're done. Write down the GCF. 5x. Multiply to the quotient. X minus 3. And you're done. Okay, this is number 9. Anybody have any questions on 9? No? You sure? Here's going to be 11. So we're going over these GCFs. 11, 6x cubed plus 4x squared. Okay, so we're going to go with step 1. Greatest common factor of 6 and 4. Try the numbers first. 6 and 4. What's your GCF? 2. Good. X cubed and x squared. X to the smallest power. What power is smaller, 3 or 2? 2. Got the GCF, 2x squared. Step 2, let's get the quotient. Quotient's going to be 6x cubed plus r4x squared. Everything over 2x squared. So, distribute that division of 2x squared. Okay. What's this quotient going to give you? What's 6 divided by 2? 3. X cubed divided by x squared. X, good. Plus, oh, x squareds cancel. 4 divided by 2 is 2. This is my quotient. All right, final answer is going to be 2x squared, the GCF, times 3x plus 2. Okay, this is number 11. You guys okay with this one? Okay, let's try 13 then. Nine x cubed minus 6x squared. Okay, 9x cubed. So for step 1, GCF. Greatest common factor of 9 and 6. What's that, GCF? Is that 3? X cubed and x squared. X to the smallest power. What power is smaller, 3 or 2? So you get x squared. Here's our GCF. Second step. Let's find the quotient. Take the original question. 9x cubed minus 6x squared. Divide by the GCF of 3x squared. 9x cubed divided by 3x squared minus 6x squared over 3x squared. 9 divided by 3 is 3. What's x cubed divided by x squared? That's x, good. X squareds cancel. 6 divided by 3 is that 2? All right, last step, final answer step. We have what? 3x squared times 3x minus 2. Okay, greatest common factor times the quotient. All right, I'll write it down here again. Anybody have any questions on this one? Number 13. (15) 10x cubed plus 8x squared. Okay. Step 1, again, GCF of 10 and 8. Right? 10 and 8. What's your greatest common factor? Is it 2? Okay. X cubed and x squared. It's x to the smallest power. So what power is smaller, 3 or 2? Okay. There you go. Now let's do the quotient, step 2. You get 10x cubed plus 8x squared divided by your GCF of 2x squared. So 10x cubed over 2x squared plus 8x squared over 2x squared. 10 divided by 2 is 5. X cubed divided by x squared. That's just x. Okay. X squareds cancel. What's 8 divided by 2? Is that 4? There you go. Final answer is going to be 2x squared times 5x plus that 4. And that's number 15. 17. (16x cubed minus 12x squared). Okay. Greatest common factor, 16 and 12. What's the GCF here? 4. Okay. And x cubed and x squared? X squared. Okay. Let's get the quotient. 16x to the third minus that 12x squared, everything over 4x squared. Okay, let's put that, let's emphasize that that's the GCF we just found, 4x squared. Okay. So now you guys can distribute your division like we worked on. (16 divided by 4 is x cubed divided by x squared is 12 divided by 4 is 3 x squared over x squared, that's gone. So final answer is 4x minus 3. Last step, your answer step will be 4x squared times 4x minus 3. Okay, you factored out, again, this is the greatest common factor. Here's your quotient. You factored out the greatest common factor. This is number 17. Okay, what do you guys think? Is that easy or is that hard? Let's try 19. (20x cubed, 15x squared). Okay, what's the first step then? Get your greatest common factor of 20 and 15. What's your GCF? 5. Good. X cubed and x squared. There you go. Let's get the quotient now. My quotient's going to be 20x cubed plus 15x squared. I'm going to divide by this 5x squared. So 20x cubed, 5x squared, 15x squared. Don't forget that's a 5x squared. Oops. What happened? Okay, don't forget we have a 5x squared here. Okay, so 20 divided by 5 is 4. X cubed over x squared is x. 15 divided by 5 is 3. And x squared over x squared, that's gone. So our final answer is going to be, GCF was 5x squared. My quotient is 4x plus 3. And I'm done. Number 19. Okay, let's see what 21 here is. We have 5x cubed minus 25x. So let's go through our process. Let's get the greatest common factor. GCF of the numbers, 5 and 25. What's this? 5. Good. X cubed and x. Is that just x? Let's double check. X cubed divided by x to the first power. X to the 3 minus 1. X to the second power. So your GCF here is going to be 5x squared. Okay, you guys okay with that one? You guys got lulled into thinking the GCF will be just an x. I want to point out to you, power here that we're looking at, right, the arithmetic we're doing, x to the third divided by x to the first. So I have to subtract 3 with 1, and that's why I got the 2. So my GCF is 5x squared. Second step again, we're going to get the quotient now. 5x cubed minus 25x. Everything over 5x squared. 5x cubed divided by 5x squared minus 25x over 5x squared. 5 and 5 is gone. What's x cubed divided by x squared? Is that x? 25 divided by 5 is what? Made a mistake.
Supposed to be 5x.
Yeah, there we go. Let's go back and deal with this. No wonder. Okay. Thank you. This is supposed to be 5x. Oh, wait a minute. Excuse me.
I thought it was the lowest power.
Uh-oh. I gotta wake up. GCF? Wait a minute. Go back up. This is all crazy and wrong. What's going on here? Oh, I'm losing my mind. Go back. Go back. We made a mistake. All right. All right, let's do this GCF again so we can wake up here. That's going to be... I think I know what's going on. Okay. 5x cubed and 25x. GCF for the numbers is 5. GCF for x cubed and x is x to the first power. It's 5x. Crazy. Okay. We lose our marbles here. Okay, now let's get our quotient. We okay with that? All right, thank you. X cubed divided by x, there's your x squared. Sorry. And then 25 divided by 5 is 5. X over x is gone. Quotient's x squared minus 5. All right, final step. 5x times x squared minus 5. This is when you try to kill two birds with one stone. All right, 21. $23. We have 6x cubed plus 8x. Okay? So, step 1. GCF. What's the GCF of 6 and 8? Is that 2? X cubed and x. Let's see if we get this right this time. X, good. It's x to the smallest power. The power here for x is 1. Okay, you guys okay with that one? Caught me napping. 6x cubed plus 8x divided by my GCF divided by the 2x. So here we go. We're going to get 6x cubed divided by 2x plus 8x divided by 2x. So what's this quotient? What's 6 divided by 2? Okay, x cubed divided by x to the first. X squared. Good. 8 divided by 2 is 4. My x's are gone. Here's my quotient. What's your final answer? 2x times 3x squared plus our 4. Remember, we have what? GCF, quotient. We factored out the greatest common factor. Go to 25. Oops. So 25, we have 8x cubed minus 12x. So step 1, our GCF. 8 and 12. What's the GCF? 4. Good. X cubed and x to the first power. X to the first power, which is just x. You're right. Step 2, we need the quotient now. 8x cubed minus 12x divided by your 4x. So you get 8x cubed divided by 4x minus 12x divided by 4x. 8 divided by 4 is 2. X cubed divided by x is x. What's x cubed divided by x to the first? Isn't that x squared? 12 divided by 4 is 3. X over x. Here's my quotient. Final answer. 4x times 2x squared minus 3. This is factoring out your greatest common factor. Okay, it's a factoring technique that you guys have to first start with and master to go do the others, really. So we're going to go through all of these. This now gives us, we're up to what? Number 27 on that worksheet. So 20x cubed plus 25x. So let's go through. Find the greatest common factor. 20 and 25. What's your GCF? you guys know? 5, good. X cubed and x. X to the smallest power. What is it? What's your x cubed and x to the first? What is it? X, good. Okay, second step, let's find the quotient. 20x cubed plus 25x divided by 5x. We can divide both terms. 20x cubed over 5x plus 25x over 5x. 20 divided by 5, what is that? 4x cubed divided by x to the first, x squared. 25 divided by 5 is 5. Okay, let's move this out of the way. And x over x is gone. This is my quotient. So let's write the final answer. 5x times 4x squared plus our 5. We factored out the greatest common factor. So let's look at the next one. The next one is 29, it looks like. So 29 here. We have 4x cubed plus 3x squared. Okay. Let's see if you guys can figure this out, right? What's your greatest common factor here? Right? You have to deal with the numbers 4 and 3. What's your GCF for 4 and 3? 1? Good. What about x cubed and x squared? What's the GCF there? Okay, it's always going to be x to the smallest power. So GCF of 4 and 3 is 1. X cubed and x squared is x squared. In other words, this is simply just what? X squared. Good. Okay. So I want to emphasize something here, that you have 4x cubed and 3x squared. You're always trying to find the GCF of the numbers separate from the letters. So for 4 and 3, you're right, the GCF is 1. Now for the letters x cubed and x squared, x to the smallest power, 2 is the smallest power, 1x squared does give you the x squared. All right. Let's get the quotient now. 4x cubed plus 3x squared divided by my GCF. Okay. 4x cubed over x squared, 3x squared over x squared. Looks like the quotient's going to be 4x plus what number? 3. Good. There we go. So we get x squared times 4x plus 3. And here's my GCF, 29. All right, let's take a look at number 31. 31 is 2x cubed minus 7x squared. Okay, we're kind of in the same situation again. I need the GCF of 2x cubed and 7x squared. So focus on the numbers separate. 2 and 7, what's your greatest common factor? 1. Good. Now x cubed and x squared. X to the smallest power, x squared. GCF is x squared. Second step, our quotient's going to be 2x cubed minus that 7x squared divided by your x squared term. 2x cubed over x squared minus 7x squared over the x squared. So what's the GCF of the first term? 2 is a coefficient. What about x cubed divided by x squared? What's that? Isn't that just x? X squareds cancel, that's minus 7. So final answer, I get x squared times my 2x minus 7 here. There you go. Here's number 31. Oops, okay, let's find out. Okay, 32. 33 now. We have 5x cubed plus 4x squared. Step 1, GCF of 5 and 4. What's the GCF? Is that 1? Okay, now x cubed and x squared.
X squared.
X squared. 1x squared is just x squared. Okay, good. Let's find the quotient, the second step. Take the original problem, divide it by the GCF. Five x cubed divided by x squared plus 4x squared divided by x squared. What's my quotient? 5x cubed divided by x squared is x plus x squareds cancel plus my 4. Okay. X squared times 5x plus 4. You factored out the greatest common factor. We have 3x to the fourth minus x squared. Okay. Step number 1. GCF of 3. 3 and what? You guys know what number's here? There's a 1. So what's the GCF of 3 and 1?
1.
That's just 1. Good. X to the fourth and x squared. What's that? X to the smallest power. Isn't that x squared again? Okay. Okay, double check. My quotient, 3x to the fourth minus 1x squared. Divide my original problem by the GCF of x squared. Okay. I get 3x to the fourth over x squared minus x squared over x squared. Okay, what happens here? Right? My number is here, my 3 is here, but what's x fourth divided by x squared? 4, what is it? 4 minus 2 is 2. And then x squared divided by x squared, anything divided by itself is 1. Here's my quotient. Right, final answer, we're going to say here is x squared times 3x squared minus 1. Okay, we factored out the greatest common factor. Here's my GCF, number 35. Okay, everybody okay with this one? Let's try a few more here. (37) is 5x to the fourth plus 2x cubed. Okay, we need the GCF. GCF of 5 and 2 is going to be, what, is it 1 again? Okay, now x to the fourth and x cubed. X cubed, good. It's x to the smallest power. Okay, good. This is x cubed, so that's my first step. Let's get the quotient now. 5x to the fourth plus 2x cubed, right, divided by the x cubed. 5x to the fourth, x cubed, 2x cubed over x cubed. We get 5 for the number here, x to the fourth divided by x cubed. What is that? Right, we take 4 minus 3, we get what? 1. X cubed over x cubed is gone. We just left with the constant 2. My quotient's going to be 5x plus that 2. Double check. What's your final answer? X cubed times 5x plus 2. Let's try 39. 2x to the fourth minus 7x cubed. Okay, that's number 39. So here, let's get the greatest common factor. 1. GCF is of 2 and 7. What is it? Oops, sorry. 1, thank you. X to the 4th, X to the 3rd. X cubed, good. GCF is X cubed. Second step, or quotient. 2x to the 4th minus 7x cubed over x cubed. 2x to the 4th over x cubed. 7x cubed over x cubed. Right, the numbers left, 2, x to the 4 minus 3 is just what? X. X cubes are gone. Here's my quotient. Final answer, x cubed, 2x minus 7. (41) on the worksheet. Now look at these problems here. They're a little different because of one fact. You now have how many terms here? 3 terms. Now the procedure is the same. We still need the GCF of the terms. So last week we talked about how to get the GCF of 3 terms, right? And again, I said, if you guys recall, do this separately, meaning GCF of 4, 2, and 8. Do the numbers first. Right? This is from last week. So what's the GCF of 4, 2, and 8?
2.
Is that 2? Now x to the 3rd, x squared, and x. Good. It's x to the smallest power. Remember, the power here for this x is 1. So 3, 2, and 1, it is x to the 1st. So that's your GCF. And that should be the same as what we did last week. So now notice how the quotient works here. We got 3 terms now, not 2. We're going to divide all 3 terms by the GCF of 2x. And we get now 4x cubed over the 2x plus 2x squared over 2x minus 8x over 2x. Let's just do the division. What's 4 divided by 2? 2. X to the 3rd divided by x to the 1st. That's x to the, what's 3 minus 1? 2, good. Now 2 divided by 2 is gone. Is that right? Now I have x to the 2nd power divided by x to the 1st power. So what is 2 minus 1? 1. Okay, minus 8 divided by 2 is 4. X over x is gone. Here's my quotient. This is how my answer looks now. 2x times 2x squared plus x minus what? 4. Okay, this is how this answer looks. So keep in mind, you factored out the greatest common factor. This is still my GCF, 2x, and this is still the quotient. It just now has 3 terms. Okay, good job. Now this is going to be 43. Okay, 9x cubed plus 6x squared plus 12x. Again, it's 3 terms. Step 1, greatest common factor. Okay, so let's try the numbers. 9, 6, and 12. What's your GCF? 3. X cubed, x squared, and x. Right, x to that 1st power, which is 3x. It's always x to the smallest power. Now my quotient again has 3 terms. 9x cubed plus 6x squared plus 12x divided by 3x divided by the GCF. So this is 9x cubed over 3x plus 6x squared over 3x plus 12x over 3x. Now let's do our division. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Remember, x cubed over x to the 1st right? X squared. 6 divided by 3 is 2. X squared divided by x to the first, x. 12 divided by 3 is 4, and my x's cancel. This is my quotient, so our final answer is going to be 3x as the greatest common factor. 3x squared plus 2x plus 4. We factored out the greatest common factor. Okay, you guys okay with that? We have time. Here's what? 45. 3x cubed plus 15x squared plus a 6x. So, again, greatest common factor. Numbers separate from the letters. 3. Okay. Now the letters. X squared, x squared, and x. Good. Let's get the quotient. Okay, don't forget all three terms we divide by the GCF of 3x. 3x cubed over 3x, 15x squared over 3x, 6x over 3x. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. What's x cubed divided by x to the first? X squared. 15 over 3 is 5. X squared divided by x to the first. Good. 6 divided by 3 is, my x's are gone. Final answer, 3x times x squared plus 5x plus your 2. Okay, well, sounds like you guys are done. Here we go. Let's end this. This is actually number 45.